As a fan of League of Legends, have you ever wished you could experience League of Legends without playing League of Legends? Well, with Arcane existing, you can now experience League without having to lift a finger outside of accessing your sister's Netflix account. But what if I told you there were another way to experience the vast and beautiful lore of League? Well, there is, and if you read the title or looked at the description, you would see that I'm talking about Ruined King, a League of Legends story. And oh boy, what a story it is. Let's get into it. So basically, Gangplank, who was thought to be dead by misfortune after burning his ship, wanted to reclaim his home, Bilgewater. His plan was to use the aid of Thresh, the maniac Shadow Isles Chain Warden, to harness the power of the ruined King Viego. Although Thresh had other intentions, those being to have Viego take control of Gangplank, Gangplank followed along without the slightest clue, even with Thresh evilly cackling to himself and talking about his plan to betray Gangplank clearly within earshot. Like, damn, dude, let the guy at least get around the corner. GP and Thresh set off the sparks of another harrowing by burying the crown of the Shattered Queen in Bilgewater, which attracts Viego and his black mist to its location. And yes, this isn't the first time a harrowing has happened. Apparently, Hecarim was there and all that cool shit, but we don't get to experience any of that. Due to the onset harrowing, Misfortune and Buru Kraken priestess Illaoi must team up to prevent the destruction of Bilgewater and ultimately the rest of Runeterra. Along their journey, they make many strong legendary allies, those being Braum, Yasuo, Pyke, and Ahri, each joining the fray for their own personal reasons. Together, they travel to the Shadow Isles and back to Bilgewater, then back to the Shadow Isles, then back to Bilgewater, then back to the Shadow Isles, and so on. And after traveling back and forth and in between the two locations, eventually Viego is freed because GP is a big dum-dum and didn't realize Thresh's true plan was to implant him with the ruined cuck. After defeating possessed Gangplank, Viego's spirit is freed to roam the world, and he heads straight to Bilgewater, where his queen's shattered crown is buried. Our legends once again proceed to go back, forth, and in between the Shadow Isles, eventually obtaining the methods to seal Viego away again. Once our legends confront Viego, a very, very extremely long battle ensues where our crew eventually emerge successful. The day is saved, Bilgewater returns to its twisted version of peace and order, and everyone goes on about their days. Now this is where we get into the real meat and fucking potatoes of this masterpiece of a video game. With most turn-based games, it's simply a back-and-forth slap fight of who can do the most damage and kill the other the fastest while most mobs are cannon fodder. This game is not that. At any point, if you are not paying attention to what's going on in combat, you will achieve the coveted game over. You see, in combat, there's this thing called the lane system, which works as a turn order bar, and it has 3 separate lanes: a power, balance, and speed lane. Abilities cast in the power lane take longer to cast but are stronger as a result. Speed lane cast abilities are faster but weaker, and balance is in between. Sounds pretty cool, right? Well, it gets better because along with the different lanes comes boom, danger, and wildcard zones. These can span from covering all 3 lanes to one and can be good for both you and the enemy, or bad for you and the enemy, or, you know, good or bad for one or the other, potentially providing things like speed boost, health, etc. Enemies in combat have many varying effects and abilities that you need to be aware of. Like, for instance, there's an enemy that has an ability that when they die, they explode, and the only way to keep them from exploding is to disarm their ability by hitting them with a speed lane attack. If you don't, you take big damage. The only way to actually know that they have this ability is to look at the enemy description, so this is a very important thing to do. Check the enemy's ability descriptions or you will be punished. Outside of combat, there's a genuinely fun and interesting world to discover with plenty of interactions with NPCs in the world of like. There's so many nooks and crannies that expand into larger areas that you could easily miss on your first go-around of exploration. It always leaves something neat to find, although the world being so big and there not being many fast ways to get around does make doing certain things or having to backtrack a bit of a slog. This game, aside from a few issues, is extremely well thought out, and you can tell that a lot of love and care went into this game. The way that the characters we know and love from the League of Legends series have their abilities transferred into a turn-based combat form is absolutely stunning. Airship Syndicate did a phenomenal job doing this. You can feel the amount of imagination and love that went into doing this. They definitely play League of Legends and understand the characters they are working with. For instance, Alawi being an off-tank healer is amazing for her. Tentacles spawn every few turns and under other conditions and do true damage to random enemies, and you can also apply on-hit effects. Not only that, you can augment heals into the tentacles attacking and make all kinds of interesting combos with the ability point system that further deepens the complexity of characters' abilities and the combat. Some of the characters have really good synergy in combat, and seeing them interact with each other outside of it feels just as good. The dialogue and character development in this game is shockingly good. You have someone like Alawi, who is a truth bearer, who is seen as the word of her god, begin to question her very faith and struggle while having others look to her for guidance because of her position. She ends up having to challenge her own god and beliefs to see the bigger picture and realize the true vision that her god, Nagakaboros, is trying to show her. Seeing the characters of League get more development is truly a blessing. Getting to learn Pyke's killing isn't indiscriminate, and that deep down he may miss the man he used to be is interesting. The guy had friends and he's probably lonely now, minus the voices in his head. Then Yasuo having to overcome the grief of cutting down his brother and being blamed for the death of his master in order to finally move on. Ari having to learn to accept the past as the past and learn to grow from it while being the last of her tribe. Also Miss Fortune having to learn some things are bigger than her lust for revenge against Gangplank. And Braum being a chill, jolly dude who just wants to save his people from the illness that a lot of them have come down with. Seeing these characters interact with each other makes me crave more. What I didn't crave more of were a few of the bugs in the game that, although now fixed, very much dampened my experience with the game. There was a point where I was in a boss fight, and at the time there was this bug that kept me from being able to switch my target, and the boss would do this thing where he basically summoned another enemy, making him immune to all damage until you kill the other enemy. If you can see where this is going, the bug made me get stuck hitting the boss, and I had to do the boss fight about 3 different times, which really pissed me off. There was also the fact that the fast travel sucked and was pretty much non-existent. You were able to warp to general areas, but you still have to hoof it, and to be able to warp to the general areas, you have to get to a warp point. I don't know why this stayed from Battle Chasers, because honestly, I did not enjoy it there either, and the world was much smaller, so that's saying something. Among other slightly annoying issues, those were the big painful ones for me. All this to say, after its patches, the game is definitely a must-play, in my opinion. It's just 30 ducks for the base game, and this is a shit ton of game for 30 doll hairs. What you could get for just 3 basic skins in League of Legends will get you this entire experience, and honestly, it might be 2 skins now thanks to Riot charging way more for skins. So if you enjoy turn-based combat, play this game. If you enjoy killer pirate music, play this game. And even if you don't, give it a try. You might find yourself surprised because this game feels good.
Is that blood mine?